Hi everyone. I'm coming to you this week from my in-laws' house in Southern California. So wishing you all a nice holiday, and I'll try to keep this brief, but I do have just a couple things that I want to say to you about the section for this week. So this week we're going to be reading about politics, states, governments, and democracy. This segues next week into our very last section on social movements. There are really a staggering number of topics and perspectives under the umbrella of political sociology, and of course we won't be able to cover it all. At the very foundation, though, I want you guys to remember that all studies of politics, especially in sociology, revolve around the concept of power, usually defined as the ability to get your interests met, even in the face of resistance. So people and social groups have different amounts of power in society, meaning that people and social groups have different levels of ability to get what they want and different levels of ability to overcome the resistance of others in getting those interests met. For instance, as many of you know, children frequently resist their parents and are sometimes successful, indicating that they do have at least some power in their relationship with their parents. However, for the most part, the resistance of children can be overcome by their parents, if not through diplomacy or appeals to legitimacy of their authority, at least through coercion, which just means the use of force to exercise power, such as when you pick your child up who refuses to go to her room and just put her there. While the world and the topics under political sociology are quite vast, and there's much that we could discuss regarding states, governments, and governance, I'd like us to direct our focus over the next 2 weeks on the concept, processes, and practices of democracy. There is so much going on right now that is relevant to our lives and covers vast swaths of political sociology topics, including immigration, healthcare, voting, taxes, the balance of business and government, the relationship between the branches of government, and the role of masses in social movements, the role of race, class, and gender in political action and organization. We could talk about our last presidential election. The enormous amount of voter suppression that happened in that election in states like Wisconsin, Kansas, Ohio, and others. We could talk about the role of race and gender in that election, or the role of class, or the role of media, and the kinds of public debates that we had during that election cycle and since. We could talk about the role of money in politics, the various ways that money influences American elections, through dark money organizations, PACs, super PACs, and others. We could talk about the two-party system and partisanship, about winner-take-all elections. We could talk about the state of civics education in the United States, or about the emoluments clause that so many people are talking about during the Trump administration. We could talk about the peculiar role of science and scientific knowledge in contemporary politics, especially with regards to environmental change and degradation. We could talk about the recent oil leak and the Keystone Pipeline and the political processes that made room for the Dakota Access Pipeline, prevented its building for a while, and reinstated that building after the election. We could talk about the sexual abuse and harassment allegations in politics. We could talk about the current culture of political discourse and debate. And all this really only covers a minimum of topics that currently have relevance in political sociology. But what I would like us to generally focus our attention on is democracy, both on the theories of democracy and the actual practice of it, with attention to the aspects of our society that currently help create healthy democracy and those that prevent it or pose dangers to the practice of democracy. What is the state of our current democracy? Why? What do we need to have in place to guarantee that it works well, institutionally, legally, and culturally? At a minimum, we could say that we need a citizenry with enough education to make informed and critical choices, a media that presents us with truthful information about world events and the behavior of our government representatives, and an accessible and transparent voting process. But what kind of education is that? What kind of media are these? And what kinds of practices facilitate widespread political participation? What other things need to be in place or need to be prevented to allow democracy to work as it should? How should it work? And which of those things are threatened or thriving? These questions and your thinking in response to them will connect to your last unit-based assignment for this class, which is to read an article from 2 different political magazines or journals that have something to do with a current political issue that relates to our democracy and democratic processes. And then in a paper, discuss the issue they bring up, what the current state of that issue is, and how it facilitates or hinders our democratic processes and practices. One final note on your reading for this week. The syllabus says that in addition to your text, you're required this week to read 1 outside article. You can disregard that. Instead of reading that, for this last assignment, you'll be choosing 2 different articles to read. So you just need to read the 2 additional articles for the assignment and nothing else. Additional details and explanation for the assignment I'm referring to, which is called Current Events and Democracy, and is due on December 9th at 11:59 p.m. Those additional details are available in the assignment portal for that assignment in the module for this coming week. So have a pleasant break, everyone, and let us all take a moment to remember also the dark and violent side of colonialism that tends to be silenced by our American Thanksgiving story. Let us allow ourselves both room for celebration and reflective commemoration. Have a good one.